I had one more thing. I think
Okay.
crop failures.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've done some initial research into that.
Uh-huh.
The typical example people bring up, the one I've read most about, is coffee production in Ethiopia.
Mhm.
There has been an increase, a decrease in an increase in failed crops in Ethiopia.
Uh-huh.
The mitigation for that is basically they have to move up just to higher climates.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you know about this. So there is an inferred position here that a change in temperature will lead to a change in agriculture.
Sorry, one technical point, because people might attack me for this if I don't say it, is that in the climate literature, they use the term mitigation. I like the way you're using it, but they use it differently. So mitigation, they mean reducing fossil fuel use. Adaptation is what you're calling
adaptation.
Okay, I just want to make clear if I use those terms.
So what I read in Ethiopia's 5% of the people are employed in the coffee industry.
Uh-huh.
There has been an increase in failures, and the way they adapt is to move their production to higher up the mountains.
Right. So generally,
that's just one example.
Right. So generally, if you think about like crops and crop failures, I mean, I think what we see in general around the world, including in the poor world, is crop production increasing over time for a variety of reasons. In terms of, so why didn't I include crop failure in my concerns? One is we're incredibly good at doing it using all kinds of technologies in different places. But the other thing is that the two of the main dynamics of rising CO2, warming and greening, are both generally very friendly to crops, because particularly when I mentioned warming occurs more in colder places of the world. So what's going to happen is, in general, more of the earth is going to have the right temperature. They're going to have the right temperature to grow things. And then also there's going to be more CO2, so it's easier to grow things.
But that's definitely a macro issue.
Oh,
so the areas that green,
mm-hmm.
So if you accept that some places are going to have lower crop production because of rising temperatures, some are going to have an increase, you're moving crop production to different areas of the world.
But what I was saying is, so it's true that some places will have, depending on the warming, will have lower production because of heat. But I'm saying even more places could have higher production because of heat, because colder places will be open to crops that weren't open before. So I'm saying in general, there's going to be more of the world will be open to crops, even leaving aside the greening.
So let's go back to my point earlier.
So Ethiopia?
Yeah. So they have already a poor nation, have a reduced production of coffee. Therefore, that lowers their GDP. Parts of Canada maybe open up to crop production, have an increase in their GDP. How do we balance that?
So the way I think of it is, just to bring in the big picture of Ethiopia, the main thing is freedom, fossil fuels, industrialization. Like, as long as they're super poor, they're going to be vulnerable to all kinds of disruptions. With this disruption, there's always a question, just like the sea levels, of how much is local, how much is global. You've talked about cherry picking.
But how much would an increase in fossil fuels in Ethiopia change coffee production to the coffee producers?
I mean, it could radically change it, right? I mean, they could have a modern industry that could be much more productive.
No, but specifically,
or they could produce other things. I mean, Ethiopia will be much better off in terms of crop production and other things if they industrialize. I mean, it would be radically better. Ethiopia is not inhospitable to life. Ethiopia could be amazing if it had the right policies and energy. So that's what I keep coming back to, is one way is every area of the earth is incredibly habitable. Almost every area is incredibly habitable if you have freedom and if you have energy. So in the US, we have a microcosm of the globe, right? We've got polar Alaska, swampy Florida, whatever Texas is, where I live in California, which is kind of like nice desert ocean type thing. Like, we can flourish in any climate, including with production of different valuable things, with freedom and with energy. And without that, almost every climate is inhospitable. And I think what a lot of the catastrophists do is they take a place that's having a climate problem. Sometimes they attribute a local problem to a global problem, but then they ignore the need for mastery. So I'm saying, if you have the ability to master, you can deal with anything.
Have I done this?
What?
Have I done this?
I don't know if you've done. I'm not focusing on you because we're not
but
debating.
This is where the discussion is. Let's keep to what I'm discussing.
Well, I think that it hasn't come up enough, so I'm trying to emphasize it more in the minds of the listeners.
Okay, but I'm not a climate alarmist. I'm here.
No, but I think you've been influenced by them, and you've expressed admiration for a lot of them.
And I've been influenced by you.
I know. I'm happy. I'm trying to even skew it a little bit more.
But okay, because the one thing I don't buy here one thing I'm struggling with this, Alex, is this idea that Ethiopia is being completely held back from industrializing. They already have an economy. They already have the ability to produce goods.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. What are they being held back from producing right now?
Well, so held back is can be equivocal, because are we holding them back, or is just lack of freedom holding them? So I said freedom is an achievement. So let's say you have various you have bad government, various bad dictatorial forces. That used to be almost the whole world. So there's a question of how do you overcome that? And what happened originally is people overcame that internally. They come up with better systems of government.
But countries with dictatorial governments have industrialized.
Well, as you've mentioned with China, often has a lot of adverse things. So you need
but that's a different point.
Even if you have, so you can have a dictatorial government that's more friendly toward industry and that has pockets of freedom in the economic realm, which a place like China does. You can have other places that don't have that.
But I imagine there are other factors that come into play here.
So what do you think are the other factors?
Well, I don't know. Local factors, educational level, the availability of resource. I can imagine there's a whole bunch of factors that are the reason somewhere like Ethiopia hasn't industrialized. And I would be reticent to just attribute it to the fact that they don't have enough fossil fuels.
Well, no. As I said, I keep mentioning freedom and fossil fuels because it's the government. If you have the wrong kind of government, and that also relates to culture at a given time, if you have that, then you can't use fossil fuels. You can't do anything well.
Okay, imagine with all the will in the world, we can't bring that freedom to these countries because it's difficult. You can encourage freedom, you can try and bring freedom, but sometimes you just can't bring it to a country. Imagine we cannot bring freedom to Ethiopia. There are people there who right now, their coffee production is at risk, and therefore it's a risk to their GDP. Do we owe a duty to them by moving the availability of the right type of land for crop production to other parts of the world?
So what are you proposing that we do?
What I'm saying is that you can talk about greening in one area and that will increase crop production there, and people in the people who are working in Ethiopia right now are going to have a reduced crop production. Mm-hmm. Do we owe them a duty?
So how would you fulfill this duty?
Subsidies, like if they have to move their crop production up the mountain, there's a cost to that. Who's going to pay for that cost?
I think all the effort. So I don't agree that nothing that we can't change. So all the effort should be spent. So all the effort that's spent saying like, poor Ethiopia, you're a victim of us, you deserve, like all that effort should be spent on, you need radical policy reform. We'll help, like we'll do whatever we can to facilitate that. But viewing it as really good friend of mine, immigrant from Ethiopia, and like his life, like he views life there as like, this was a catastrophe. Like I'm in the US, like I get to be, the CEO of a company now, and I can have these amazing opportunities. Like I view life there. So when I talk about the cherry picking that exists in general, and that's passed on to most people, we look at Ethiopia and we're taught to think mostly about these variations in climate. And what I'm trying to say is we should look at the abject poverty. That's the core. And climate is just one tiny sliver of the problems of poverty.